feel like my channel is starting to have a theme. Let's begin. We're going to bend reality a little bit, and for this week's topic, we're going to take a look at Surrealism. Surrealism is an art movement that originated in the 20th century. It aimed to release the creative potential of the unconscious mind and dreamlike state. Founded by the father of Surrealism, André Breton, in 1926, began the movement with his creative writing. This paved the way for renowned artists like Frida Kahlo or Max Ernst, and of course the iconic Salvador Dali. These artists blended dreamlike imagery and contrasting elements, creating works that captivated and inspired future generations. The irrational form of expression provided a profound path for creativity and stretched the boundaries of what art could be. It was during my final years of high school, while working on an art assignment, that I stumbled upon Salvador Dali. His vivid imagery and surrealist style captivated me immediately. The length he went through for his art, from his erratic behavior and his methodical techniques, were truly mind-boggling. This guy used to drop acid and soak in a bath until he hallucinated his paintings. I'm definitely not advocating for drug use, especially with the long-term effects like anxiety, paranoia, triggering of underlying mental disorders, and let's not forget HPPD. A side effect where years down the road, you are sitting with your family for a nice dinner and suddenly being hit with a random flashback or hallucinations. It's like that movie with Jim Carrey in it, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Without warning, just poof mid-mashed potato, and you're drowning in a pile of spuds, talking corn, and an over-seasoned gravy ocean while the world melts away around you. Definitely an interesting technique for painting, one that I do not recommend. If you already lean towards Surrealism as an art style or a preferred form of artwork, your mind is already twisty and loopy. You don't need acid to highlight that any further. I have drawn some weird and wacky creatures in my time, the kind I would not want to meet in real life. As far as I'm concerned, my dreamlike creatures can stay in my head. The piece that I'm drawing today does have some surrealism elements within it, leaning more towards the dreamlike than something logical. Still mostly fantasy-based, but surrealism made a big impression on me when I was younger, and now it influences my artwork today. Without surrealism, we might not have had the abstract expressionism. We wouldn't have had cubism, futurism, or even pop art. Andy Warhol's infamous soup can series, or even his well-known like Marilyn Monroe silk screening, may never have been created. Imagine if I never saw Dali's work. How would that influence my art today? What would yours look like? What is the next phase going to look like when it comes to the avant-garde movement? Is it going to be Banksy? Or is AI going to completely outshine with the development of augmented reality and AI-generated work? How can us as artists utilize the tools that we have today to trigger the next movement in art? And what is that going to actually look like? Many questions to ponder for the future. If you stuck with me this far, you have probably noticed that the art piece that I'm working on today has more of a fall feel to it, especially with the changes of the seasons. I'm starting to see a lot more squirrels collecting their nuts and acorns for the winter, and a lot more monarch butterflies around the area that I live. I don't know if they're starting to migrate, but they seem to be everywhere these days, and I wanted to add that into the sketch that I was working on because sometimes as I'm walking, they'll literally come in like 3 or 4 at a time, and it's almost like dreamlike. So I wanted to incorporate that in. I've been taking a lot of photos as well as I go on my daily walks, just so I can have my own version of reference photos that I would be able to utilize in my sketches. As much as things like Pinterest and, Google have images, sometimes you just want something unique that hasn't been seen. Like one day these sketches might become like a full-fledged art piece, and I don't want it to be a replica of something that you can easily find on Google. I want to stipulate that there is absolutely nothing wrong with finding photos online, especially if you're practicing something. It's just a preferred method for me. I wanted to change this piece up a little bit more and add in some extra details and elements to it just to make it pop a little bit. So I utilized some of my older Ohuhu markers to add in some additional shading, a brush pen marker. The brush pen was a lot darker than I thought it was. Ohuhu is really famously known for not matching their colors with their lids. So I definitely had to do a couple of swatch tests for the marker before I used it on my drawing. This was the lightest shade that I had in the purple. I wish I had a lighter shade, but it did what it needed to do. It just adds a little bit extra dimension to the sketch. Like the sketch isn't a finalized piece of artwork, but it was something that I wanted to try out and add more to it and more depth to the sketch. I definitely liked how it came out. It added more dimension and life into the drawing. It made it really stand out compared to just the outlined pen sketch. Even though the pen sketch is a little bit more defined than I normally do, because I tend to keep it a little loose, adding that extra layer of the purple really jumped it up. It's one of the great things about having a sketchbook. You can try out new techniques, new methods, and nobody will see it if you don't want them to. Your sketchbook is your world. However, which way you want to build it, try things, fail, try them again. Your art can either be simple or more advanced. It's ultimately up to you. Push those limits if you want to. Come back to it later, add to it. You'll even see that I went back in with an opposite color, a contrasting color, just to add that extra layer of pop. But this is what we're talking about when it comes to pushing boundaries, right? It might just be a sketch, but how far can you even take the simplest of images? Well, that's it for today. I am curious to know what your thoughts are on surrealism and how it actually can impact your artwork, what it's done for you. Let me know in the comments. But if you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and I want to thank you for tuning in. Have yourselves a wonderful day.